thank you for tuning in to Around the NFL, presented by 22-year-olds with acne. I'm kidding. It's presented by FTFN Network. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Matthew Hodowany, lead NFL writer at FTFNnetwork.com, and I'm joined as always by my excellent co-host, Nick Gardner. Nick, how are you doing today, buddy?
Good, man. It was another good weekend of football. It's so beautiful to have it back. You just wake up on a Sunday morning, have a little breakfast, maybe a lunch, depending on when you get up, and just sit on the couch and watch football.
Yeah, my Bills didn't play till later because we had the 4:00 start. So got a nice little sleep in, made a nice big old breakfast,
Yep.
and watched us handle the Las Vegas Raiders. So 4-0, here we go. Lots of stuff to get to today. First of all, the Tennessee Titans had a second day in a row where no positive COVID tests came out of the team. It looks like they're going to try and reopen the facilities. Looking forward towards Sunday where they take on my Buffalo Bills. Should be a very interesting game. But I think the biggest topic that we got to kick off the show with is that good old Billy O'Brien, Billy O'Stooge, is finally canned by the Texans. So, Nick, we were kind of talking about this pre-show. I know you got a lot to say about this, so I'll give you the floor here, man.
It's about time. Yeah. It's about time. I mean, there's plenty of paths that I could take this, as there is with many topics. But there's two separate things. There's the coach and then there's the GM.
Yep.
As a coach, I don't think he's terrible, but I also don't think he's great. I think there's plenty of offensive minds that can use Deshaun Watson and those weapons much better. Cough, cough, Eric Bieniemy. But I think this is more to do with the general manager, Bill O'Brien. And honestly, it's a tough job to be a head coach and a general manager. I don't know why they gave him both, to be quite honest with you. He was never a head coach in the league before this, to my knowledge, my current knowledge sitting on this Zoom call. So I don't know where he got the credibility to become a head coach and a general manager in his first shot, basically.
Yeah.
And then, everybody knows trading away DeAndre Hopkins for a bag of peanuts. Trading for Laramie Tunsil, which is great, but trading him for 2 first-round picks, trading for him and Kenny Stills for 2 first-round picks is not a good trade. So they don't have a first-round. They didn't have a first-round pick last year. They don't have a first-round pick this year, nor do they have a second-round pick. So, and on top of all that, they have the highest payroll in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, I think
most of those players are no longer playing for them anymore.
The two biggest gruffs, I don't even know if it's a word, but two biggest problems I have with Bill O'Brien is that Bill O'Brien, the general manager, made it harder for Bill O'Brien, the head coach, to do his job. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of reports that came out once DeAndre Hopkins was traded that Bill traded him because he didn't get along with him. Mm-hmm. And I think that's kind of been his Achilles heel throughout his entire coaching career with the Texans, is that he lets his personal relationships get in the way of the betterment of the team. And if you have a generational player like DeAndre Hopkins and you can't put your personal arguments aside, you should not be in a position where you can ship him out of town.
Yeah. Another thing with DeAndre Hopkins was that DeAndre wanted a new deal, and I think he still had at least 2, if not 3 years left on his deal, on his current deal, which he just restructured with Arizona a couple of weeks back. So Arizona got him paid.
Yep.
We actually talked about it on the show. I think it was about 2 weeks ago. But Bill O'Brien didn't want to do that. But see, this is where it becomes different, because if you're just a head coach, you have DeAndre Hopkins, you don't care what he's getting paid. You have DeAndre Hopkins on the field, you can do whatever you want with him. But when you're the general manager, then you can kind of have some beef, so to speak. Most contract negotiations are contentious. They're not, hey, I want 50. No, I want 25. Okay, we'll meet in the middle. It's not like that. You know what I mean? It doesn't work like that. And sometimes there is a little bit of, contentious days and weeks where people are going back and forth with your agent and stuff like that.
I mean, just look at the Dak Prescott, Jerry Jones situation.
Exactly. And from what I know, Bill O'Brien is the general manager, so he's doing most of the negotiating. I'm sure he has a cap that's sent by the McNair family, who owns the Texans, or a mental cap that he doesn't want to pay over for DeAndre. Mm-hmm. And from what I know also, DeAndre negotiated this past deal with Arizona without an agent. Yep. So that means that they were negotiating their deal together, basically face-to-face. Bill O'Brien and DeAndre Hopkins are both negotiating their deal for DeAndre while also playing together as coach and wide receiver, which is just a very messy situation. There's a reason, really outside of Bill Belichick in New England, And even then, the owner, Robert Kraft, is basically the general manager because he deals with the contract negotiations and stuff.
Yeah, he writes the checks.
What's that?
He writes the checks there.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a reason that role is – there's a reason that's a full-time role.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a reason why general manager matters so much in the NFL outside of any other league, because there's so many players and there's so little space to pay them all, especially when your quarterback like Deshaun Watson is now is getting $40 million a year, or that paycheck's coming up. You have to get everybody at certain levels. But to wrap this up here, to replace Bill O'Brien has to, no question in my mind, has to be Eric Bieniemy, because they have – if the Texans have one thing outside of Deshaun Watson, if the Texans have one thing now that DeAndre Hopkins is gone, it's speed. And they have a boatload of speed. Like, they have guys that can absolutely fly, Will Fuller included.
Yeah.
So if Eric Bieniemy can get his hands on, all those toys, so to speak, with Deshaun Watson, because Deshaun Watson is – like, I was watching out of the corner. I was at work on Sunday, and I was watching out of the corner of my eye. That dude is just – like, the balls that he puts, it's just – it reminds me a lot of Aaron Rodgers, honestly. It's just very easy for him.
The really concerning thing about
a good mind there, I like the Texans a lot.
I just want you to I'm going to say this, and I want you to take it in. I want you to process it. Houston Texans have the same record as the Jets.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, given that the Texans have played a lot of difficult teams, but you're not wrong.
Yeah.
They haven't looked as bad as the Jets. Like, your record says who you are, but doesn't always say who you are, if that makes sense.
Yeah, like the Bills are 4-0, but I mean, all of our wins have been by a single score. Like, we've yet to completely blow out a team. But moving on here, we got a couple of injuries we got to get to. Nick Chubb has an MCL sprain. He's going to be on IR. That's going to be a tough blow to the Browns because they've really committed to the run this year, being a run-first team with Kevin Stefanski. Julio Jones looks like he got a hamstring injury last night against the Packers. Sam Darnold had a dislocated shoulder. I'm going to get to that a little bit later because I have a lot to talk about the Jets.
I didn't realize he dislocated his shoulder. I knew he was hurt, but I didn't realize it was dislocated.
Yeah, when we get to the hero and zero part of the show, I'm going to dive into that a little bit more.
All right.
Cam Newton, as many of you all know, he has COVID, and Austin Eckler for the Chargers was out as well too. Out of those, I really think that Nick Chubb is going to be the biggest loss. Julio Jones has been kind of in Calvin Ridley's shadow a little bit this season. Sam Darnold, the Jets are going to be the damn Jets. Cam Newton, the Patriots really missed him last night with their quarterbacking situation with Hoyer and Stidham. And Austin Eckler, I mean, starting running back for the Chargers is going to be very crucial as well too. But definitely think that Nick Chubb is the biggest loss out of that handful.
I'll just give my 2 cents here. I just wanted to check the Patriots schedule. So the Patriots play the Broncos next week at 4:25, and then they have a bye week.
Mm-hmm.
So in my opinion, Cam Newton's the biggest loss because that's the signal caller of your team, and the quarterback's the most important position on the field. And they look out of shambles without him yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, Brian Hoyer and Stidham look.
He had 2 red zone turnovers, or not turnovers, but at the end of the half they got sacked and let the clock run out, effective of a turnover. And then I couldn't remember if it was an interception within the 20-yard line or if he got a sack fumble, but he had another turnover. Jarrett Stidham came in, played all right, not great. But if you're the Patriots, it's good that you have the Broncos next week, which is a winnable game. They don't have Drew Lock. I would like to think that Bill Belichick will do enough to run the ball, play defense, and win that game. And then you have a bye week, so hopefully Cam can get a couple back-to-back negative tests and stay asymptomatic, and he can be back in, what would it be, week 8, I guess?
Yeah, well, it's going to be interesting to see if they want to play Cam against the Broncos. I would assume that they would let him rest a little bit more and kind of get back up to speed.
I think so, too. Especially with all the protocols and stuff, it wouldn't make much sense to throw him back out there.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if they're allowed to, because technically the COVID quarantine process is 14 days for everybody that's living right now. So I don't think Cam Newton gets any kind of special treatment when it comes to that. So I would assume that he's going to miss the Broncos game too, which honestly, if I was a coach, I would do because that's a winnable game too. I could see the Patriots playing with Jarrett Stidham, running the ball, a little bit of play action pass, playing solid defense, maybe getting a turnover or 2 on the defensive end, and winning like 20 to 7.
Yeah, and I mean Rex Burkhead is coming off a performance a week prior. We had 3 touchdowns, so just kind of grind out the clock. It's really just manage the game.
They play solid football, and that's what Bill Belichick does well. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them do that. You're right, though. Nick Chubb is a big loss, but we'll get into the Browns in a bit, but they still ran for over 300 yards on the ground without Nick Chubb. He only ran for like 30 or 40. So I think they'll be just fine. But in Julio's, yeah, you're right. He's been in and out all year. Calvin Ridley's had a better year than him. So the Falcons are still dangerous, though. It's like they're also 0-4, though. So
yeah. Moving on here, man. We've been hammering on the Detroit Lions since we've started this show. And this week is going to be no exceptions, where they blew a 14-point lead to the New Orleans Saints and then gave up 35 unanswered without Michael Thomas. And I believe, I could be very wrong on this, but I believe, I heard on the broadcast, that this is the sixth game in a row where they've given up a lead and lost. Drew Brees did not have a particularly good game either. He only threw for 246 yards, a pair of touchdowns, and an interception. And, man, at what point does Matt Patricia just get escorted out of the building?
If that six straight leads given up stat is true, that's an ugly look. That is an ugly look, because in the same breath of that happening, people in Atlanta are screaming for Dan Quinn to be fired, which I'm honestly surprised he's not yet.
Yeah.
Screaming for Dan Quinn to be fired because he keeps giving up leads. And the Atlanta Falcons are known for giving up leads.
Mm-hmm.
So, and like you said, Detroit came out hot. I think it was 14-0 to begin the game. That's not much in the NFL. We all know that. And it's not a huge surprise that the Saints came back, because that's just how sports always work. But at the end of the day, I don't know. What was the final list? 35-21?
Yeah, it was like that.
So that's unacceptable. So to give up 5 straight touchdowns is completely unacceptable. And the part that makes no sense in Detroit is that Matt Patricia was brought in for his defense. He was this defensive guru. He was, a Bill Belichick mastermind, and he was supposed to be fantastic coming from New England, and he's brought all these New England players over, and it just doesn't make any sense. Where is the production?
His highest, I think he's known for the most is calling that play in the Super Bowl. But if the Seahawks run that ball, that's a touchdown, that's a win, that's a Super Bowl win. That's a loss on his record.
Yes.
And I want to get to one of the quotes he said after the game, which I think really kind of summarizes where he is and what he thinks of himself. So he says, quote, "We just lost to the Saints. Let's give them credit for this game. They played extremely well, and I know we got a lot of work to do." I want to emphasize that part. He says, we got a lot of work to do. I think when it came to Detroit, there's a lot of work to do, and that's what we're trying to do. But talking about this year, we're talking about right now. These first 4 games, and obviously today wasn't good enough. So he inherited a team from Jim Caldwell that was 9-7, and he's saying that we have a lot of work to do. Mm-hmm. He has done no work.
You make that make sense, because that didn't make sense to me. So I don't know how you – I don't know off the top of my head Matt Patricia's record in Detroit, but I'm pretty sure it's something like 9 or 10 wins, 20 plus losses.
Yeah,
maybe a mile or 2.
Yeah, over 34 games, I think it was like 9 wins and as many losses, because he has just been an absolute disaster for the organization.
Yeah, so I don't understand how you take a 9-7 team that sure wasn't great defensively, but had an electric offense, and you start blaming other people, saying that, we came here, there's a lot of work to do, essentially the team wasn't put together well. How does that happen? They were in the playoffs with Jim Caldwell, if I'm not mistaken.
And Jim Caldwell was fired for not doing good enough. And Matt Patricia has got season after season of leeway.
But we see that a lot, though. So I'm not mad at the firing, because there's always times where I make a basketball analogy all the time, where the Warriors fired Mark Jackson, and now they're the Warriors that they were with Steve Kerr, right? Mm-hmm. And that happens all the time. So I'm not mad at the firing. You can't blame somebody for wanting to get over the hump. Or like the Cowboys with Jason Garrett, same thing. Although they're not doing well either, but still. That, and then to throw him under the bus like that, him being Jim Caldwell, that's inexcusable. That's just disrespectful in so many different ways. And Matt Patricia, I would think, would know better, coming from New England and knowing how to deal with the media, being around Bill Belichick. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if he's just trying to find a scapegoat, trying to buy himself more time, but it's an ugly look in Detroit.
I think he's run out of excuses for himself that he's trying to throw it on other people.
That's what it feels like.
And if you look at any successful organization, especially with the New England Patriots, if there is a problem with the game, that person will wear it.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you look at Tom Brady, he threw like a last minute interception and be like, yeah, like I shouldn't have thrown that. I should have checked another read. Or you look at Bill Belichick, he's like, oh, I got to watch the tape. I got to find out where we went wrong. Matt Patricia's idea is just to blame everybody else. He's like, it's not my fault.
And on top of that, Michael Thomas didn't even play. So the Saints aren't even at full strength, and we know how the Saints have been up and down all year. Drew Brees didn't play fantastic, like you said. So it's not like they went up against a juggernaut. The Saints are good. Don't get me wrong. They are a Super Bowl contender.
And they couldn't stop the run. Alvin Kamara had a field day with that defense.
It's unacceptable. You know, coming in, that if you lose, giving up 4 touchdowns to Emmanuel Sanders and Traquan Smith, because Drew Brees throws for over 300 and starts throwing the ball 10, 15, 20 yards downfield, then you take it. You eat it and say, okay. But you cannot lose to Alvin Kamara running up the middle, Latavius Murray running up the middle. That is just inexcusable. Absolutely. I don't know how he still has a job.
I don't know when the Ford family really kind of decides to put the hammer down, but let's move on here. So we got the Browns and the Cowboys here, and it was an interesting game to watch because Baker Mayfield was brought into this offense because he was a really electric player at Oklahoma and was touted as one of the most generational players coming out of the draft. And he was pretty quiet in this game, only had 165 passing yards and 2 touchdowns. But the thing I really like about the Browns is that they've really changed under Stefanski compared to their last head coach. And they've really committed to being a run-first team. And it shows that if they're able to do that, they're able to beat some pretty notable teams here.
Well, that's why Stefanski was brought in, because he was the offensive coordinator in Minnesota, and we all know the running back in Minnesota, Dalvin Cook, is fantastic. And they were run heavy. And Dalvin Cook has become one of the best running backs in the league playing in that offense. Still one of the best running backs in the league. But for Baker Mayfield to be successful, he needs to be a play-action passer that doesn't throw the ball more than 30, 35 times a game.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Absolutely not. But like you said, he's supposed to be this prodigy coming out of Oklahoma. And he's not that guy.
No.
And as long as they can accept that and move forward with that, that's okay. Because it kind of reminds me of like Alex Smith and Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers. You can win the ball with win the game with Aaron Rodgers. But Alex Smith probably won't win you the game.
No.
He's just kind of, I don't want to use the term game manager, but that's kind of where I'm going. And if Baker can play like that, he has enough playmakers on the outside, a good enough offensive line, and a great running game where they can still be very, very good. And they have a pretty good defense too.
And I like how I like how 2 of their wide receiver touchdowns had nothing to do with Baker.
Yeah. And that's not going to be don't expect that every week.
And it's not an indictment on Baker. I mean, you have Landry, who throws an absolute dot to OBJ in the end zone. And I really like this because Landry tweeted out after the game, yo, my lat hurts. It feels like I just pitched 9 innings. And then you have OBJ doing a jet sweep for a huge touchdown run. And I mean, like, both of those plays didn't involve Baker, obviously, other than him taking the snap. But again, that's not an indictment on his capabilities. It just kind of shows how the offense has been evolving with Stefanski this season.
Yes, I like that you use the word evolving because that's exactly what it is. But I wouldn't expect stuff like that every week. But that's
no. And if you do that stuff every week, people are going to game plan it, and you're going to get absolutely obliterated.
It's not going to be consistent, but the running game for Cleveland is what is going to make it tick because they ran for over 300 yards, and Nick Chubb, like I said, ran for like 30 or 40 before he got hurt. So Kareem Hunt had I don't think he had 100, maybe right around there, maybe 70 to 100. And then Dearness Johnson, who I'd never even heard of before I checked the box score, ran like 20 times or something like that for over 100 yards. And I was like, okay, if the Browns can do that, then they're going to be forceful because they play action and they have 2 of the best receivers in the league. And this was the kind of the rhetoric around Cleveland anyways, was that they weren't using OBJ correctly. They were only using him on go routes, which is true. But if you play action and actually give him a chance to win on go routes, then that'll work. But if you just drop back out of the pistol or out of under center and start running go routes, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
So it just depends on how you want to use your playmakers. But it's clear that running the ball is what's going to set the tempo for them because if they don't run the ball, people can back off and start doubling OBJ and Jarvis Landry, playing zones and whatever you want to do, combo coverage. And it's going to be a tough day for Baker because he's not that kind of quarterback yet. I don't know if he's going to be ever, but he's not yet. He's not that guy who can throw 40 times a game and win you a ball game.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see how that whole draft class has really changed. I mean, if the way that it was drafted, I mean, you had Josh Rosen going really high, obviously Baker going first overall. Lamar didn't go until the very end, and Josh Allen. I mean, you look at that draft class now, and it's only Lamar and Josh who are really, playing up to that next level.
Yep.
So, I mean, when it's all said and done, that's going to look back at either one of the better draft class or one of the bigger busts when it comes to quarterbacks.
Yep. And I know we're going to move on here after this, but I just want to make a point about the Cowboys defense. They don't have a chance if they don't have a defense.
No, not at all.
Last 3 weeks, they've given up 39 points, 38 points, and 49 points. How on God's green earth are you ever going to win football games averaging about 40 points a game?
We've seen how the NFL has shifted to an offense-first league.
It definitely is.
Have to be able to stop.
40 points is ridiculous. That is a lot. That's like 5 touchdowns. Over 5 touchdowns.
Yeah. That's
ridiculous. That is absolutely ridiculous. You can give up 1 touchdown per quarter and you would still not get the 35, even 40 points. That is ridiculous. There's no way, because then if you give up that many points, then you're not going to be able to run the ball with Zeke how you built your team. Dak Prescott's leading the league in passing yards right now. It's just they're not who they want to be if they give up those kind of points.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like every single season they have a different identity.
Yeah, but their identity should be running the ball with Zeke.
I mean, if you have a tattoo on your stomach that says "feed me,"
you have to feed the guy.
You gotta feed the guy.
You gotta feed the guy. It's that simple.
Moving on here, going from a run-heavy team to a pass-heavy team. I really like this matchup between Tom Brady and Justin Herbert. It was kind of like, it was almost a changing of the guard, but Brady was like, no. Now is not the time. Scoring for 369 yards and 5 touchdowns. And we kind of talked previously about, is Brady is he missing his fastball? Man, he brought it against the Chargers. And the Chargers are a very well-structured secondary. The fact that he was able to carve him up for 5 touchdowns on the day, pretty impressive. Justin Herbert was no slouch either. He threw for almost 300 yards and 3 touchdowns on the day as well, too. So this was an electric, high-scoring game that I don't think a lot of people kind of predicted to see it get to this level.
So this was the talk about Brady all year. Well, first of all, let's just get this out of the air. The Chargers are a little bit banged up. I'm pretty sure, 99% sure, Melvin Ingram and Chris Harris both didn't play.
Yeah. If you have Derwin James on your roster for that game too, I don't think Brady gets those 5 touchdowns.
Yes. So but regardless of that, this was the talk about Brady all year, is that he can't throw deep. It was his arm's gone. He's falling off a cliff, as Max Kellerman on First Take always likes to say. Yada yada yada. And then it was either that or people blamed the weapons in New England. And they're like, there's no weapons. He's old. He can't play no more. He's trash. Just whatever. They're not even a Super Bowl contender in Tampa Bay. I don't care how good Mike Evans and Chris Godwin are, et cetera, et cetera. Or on the other hand, you were like, Brady's the GOAT. He has all these weapons. He's going to be fantastic.
Yeah.
And on Sunday, it was probably the first time that Tom Brady really got to prove that.
Yeah.
I don't know what the score was. I didn't watch the full game. But I know the Chargers were up for most of that game. And Brady had to lead them back. And it was multiple scores, too. It was either 14-0 or 21-0 or something along those lines. And I was watching ESPN the other day, and I heard Dan Orlovsky say that Brady's yards per attempt, in terms of air yards per attempt, was 13 yards. And everybody's on Brady, he dink and ducks. If he was dinking and dunking, it would have been like 5 or 6 yards. Mm-hmm. To average 13 yards of air on each attempt shows you something. Because the Chargers didn't believe that Brady could throw over top of them.
Right.
And that's exactly what he did with all of his weapons. And that was the scary thing about the Bucs to begin with, was that they had an all right defense, but with all those weapons, if Brady can throw the ball deep and use Mike Evans and use Gronkowski and use Chris Godwin, O.J. Howard, Cameron Brate, Scotty Miller now. Like Scotty Miller runs like a 4.3. This guy's quick as heck. And if he can use those guys, both short game, intermediate, and deep, boy. Like, when was the last time you saw Brady throw for 370 and 5 touchdowns?
You'd have to rewind the clock.
Years. It might have been recent. I don't know, but it feels like years.
Yeah.
And he was lethal today.
And I think we're really starting now to see who the Tampa Bay Bucs are, because I mean we've seen how no offseason has played a huge role in injuries and in every area of the team. And I mean, I was listening to ESPN too, and they said that defenses were going to be dominant for the first couple of weeks because offenses are still installing their game plans. Obviously, you have free agents who are signing to new teams, really starting to get the lay of the land, trying to learn the playbook. So I get from here on out, I wouldn't be surprised if this is what we grow to see of the Bucs, because now you have a little bit of consistency and you can really start to build on every single week instead of going from weeks 1 to 3, 1 to 4, where you're still installing everything. Exactly. So this Tampa Bay offense can now, I believe around now is when they can really start to kind of reach those offseason expectations and get to those new heights. Obviously, when they get Godwin back, that's going to be a huge, huge factor. Evans played out of his mind. And I think that, moving forward, this Tampa Bay team is going to be feared.
And that's the thing about offenses is it takes a long time, or not a long time. It's like baseball, where they always say that the pitchers own the first half of the season because it takes the batters a little bit of time to get ready and get going and get back into the flow of things. And that's the same thing with offenses. It takes a while for everybody to get in sync and everybody to understand what's going on, and whether it's 2-minute drills, 4-minute drills, hurry up offense, whatever it may be. And it takes a little bit of time for people to get acclimated to each other, let alone with the pandemic, let alone with Brady. And the biggest thing is that Brady, the way he runs his offenses is so precise. When he was in New England, it was, we have this culture, you plug and play, you need to figure out what you're doing.
Yeah.
If Randy Moss comes in, or if any of these other players come in and they're one receiver coming into that culture.
That's why Antonio Brown didn't work.
What's that?
That's why Antonio Brown didn't work.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Perfect example. And when he went to Tampa, it was, okay, I'm one guy surrounded by this culture. Now I need to feed this culture to change and kind of flip. Like what I'm doing with my hands here. You know what I mean? And that's what he needs to do in Tampa. And that's why he had those off-season workouts when the high school things were closed or whatever. The high school fields were closed. And that's what he's trying to do in Tampa Bay. And it takes time. It takes throwing interceptions to Mike Evans, or miscommunications with Mike Evans that leads to interceptions. It takes things like that to sit and film, go to practice the next week and be like, hey, this happened on the game field. This can't happen again. This is why it happened. And let's move forward from it. And
it's tough. I mean, you spend so many years with the organization. I just imagine him cleaning out his closet and having to put all of his Patriot stuff in a cardboard box and being like, yo, I have no clothes left. And I mean, we saw when Peyton Manning went from the Colts to the Broncos, and there was kind of like that weird transition period as well too. But I mean, they won a Super Bowl.
Yep, and they had one of the best offenses for a few years back then. It's the reason Adam Gase lost a friggin' job. But anyways.
But don't even get me started on Adam Gase. Moving on here, going from our hero and zero segment. My hero of the week was Teddy Bridgewater. Got his first rushing touchdown since his reconstructive knee surgery. Threw for 276 yards and 2 touchdowns on the day with Carolina Panthers. And I mean, it's hard just to not be happy for this guy. He went from a Saints quarterback room with Drew Brees and Taysom Hill, and now he's really kind of getting his long overdue shot in the NFL again. There was just a huge fall from grace with him when he had his injury, no fault of his own, with the Panthers and with the Vikings, my apologies. And just to see him kind of get back in that spotlight, really live up to his expectations and shine, it was just great to see.
Yep. I couldn't agree with you more. He got the good contract in the offseason. He's got a chance to prove himself now. I'm happy for Teddy Bridgewater.
So happy for him. And somebody who I'm not very happy with is Greg Williams with the New York Jets. And we were talking before the show and I said, I want to talk about Greg Williams. And this is what I want to talk about. How he is still employed by the NFL is beyond me, because he was a part of Bountygate. And there was a release clip of one of his locker room speeches saying, if you kill the head, the body will die. You know who he was talking about there? Frank Gore. And Frank Gore is on his team.
Oh, wow.
And we saw time and time again against that Broncos team where Greg Williams was not trying to win the game. He was trying to injure players. There was a litany of personal fouls. Players tackling with their head up, going directly into the face mask of Rippon. And the fact that he was not escorted out of that game is beyond me. His defenses have a history of being ugly. They have a history of doing dirty hits. And he deserves everybody's zero of the week.
Wow. I'm not even going to add to that. That was passionate. That was good. All right. Well, I'm going to change it to a lighter tone because, I agree with you. He does have a history, and that's not pretty. I didn't watch the entire game, so I don't know exactly everything that you're referring to, but, I mean, you convinced me. So
that whole Jets coaching staff with Greg Williams and Adam Gase is just a tire fire.
Just a disaster. My hero of the week is good old blonde-headed OBJ. And listen, I'm a Ravens fan, so I want him to have success, maybe not too much success, but as long as it doesn't come against us or he doesn't win the division, I don't really care. And I'm just happy for him because of the amount of slander that this guy has gotten in the last year or two is absolutely absurd.
If I was him, I wouldn't even have social media, man.
OBJ is one of the best receivers in the league, top 5, if not top 7 or top 8. I don't care what anybody says to me. He is. That dude is electric. And all I've heard from some friends and people on social media and stuff is that he's washed, he's injury prone, he's not consistent, he's a character, or maybe even a cancer in the locker room, all this slander. OBJ had 7 touches yesterday, rushing and receiving, 154 yards, and 3 touchdowns.
Put some respect on his name.
So that's all I want to say to you guys. He is an absolute workhorse. I'm so happy for him.
This is one thing I feel about OBJ, and I think it's going to kind of him. They're not comparable players at all, but I feel like OBJ and Tyrod Taylor at the end of their careers are going to be looked at in the same light, and they're going to say, you know what, they just were never on the right team. They never really were given the. Look, if you look at Tyrod Taylor, he's bounced from team to team, never really got a comfortable starting position other than when he was in Buffalo. And he's put in bad situation after bad situation where he's been kind of like, oh, you're the starter, but if you even like sneeze and the offense jumps offside, you're out of here. And it's the same thing with OBJ. I mean, he went from a pretty conservative passer in Eli Manning, and you go to the Cleveland Browns where, I mean, they're looking very good this year, but last year was a disaster. And I think at the end of their careers, you know, if you put OBJ with – could you imagine if you put OBJ with Tom Brady in the prime of his career?
Mm. Yep.
And like I said, they're not comparable players at all.
I don't know if I love the Tyrod Taylor comparison. I'm going to be honest with you. You might get heated.
That's why I said they're not comparable at all.
I don't know, but OBJ is solid. I really like him, and so is Tyrod Taylor. I don't think they're on the same level, to be frank with you, but I understand what you're getting at. OBJ hasn't had that, you know, that true good quarterback where you can kind of build a rapport with him and you know, like an Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams style.
Can you imagine Aaron Rodgers and OBJ?
I've been saying that. Well, I don't know if I said it on the show, so I'm going to say it now. Well, they won't now because Cleveland's playing well, but if they played poorly, they should trade OBJ to the Packers.
Would be.
And you're talking Super Bowl. Yeah. But to get into my zero here is Kyler Murray. And I've been on and on what the Arizona Cardinals. And I said, you know what? Show me. You have Cliff Kingsbury and you have Kyler Murray and you traded for DeAndre Hopkins. You drafted Isaiah Simmons. You have all these names and all this hype and this, you know, 20-year-old head coach, it seems like, and this little quarterback that is just fantastic and everybody loves him, offensive rookie of the year. So show me something. Mm-hmm. And in the first 2 weeks, they did. They beat San Francisco, which was full strength at that point, and they were still a very good team. And they were 2-0 going into week 3. Now they're 2-2. So, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they lost to the Lions 2 weeks ago.
Yes, there we go. Thank you. And Kyler Murray completed 24 passes for a combined 133 yards.
That's your MVP right there.
That doesn't make any sense.
That's your MVP right
He
there.
threw 3 touchdowns and he ran the ball for about 80 yards or so. But if you're Kyler Murray and you want to be in that top tier or even second tier of quarterbacks in this league, you need to beat the Detroit Lions, and you can't throw for 133 yards, and you need to beat the Panthers.
Yeah.
You can't beat the Niners and lose to the Panthers and Lions. That is not how it works.
The Niners have been really depleted from injuries, though.
Yeah, he beat the Niners in week 1, so they were still full strength. They had Nick Bosa and everybody, so that was actually a good win. I came on here and I praised him for it, but
yeah, you were pounding the table about him
because he played fantastic, and then he just regressed on me there and made me look like a goof. So I don't appreciate that. I do not appreciate that. They beat the Washington football team also 30-15. But
kicking off this upcoming week,
31-21 to the Panthers. Unacceptable. They have the Jets this week, and then the Cowboys and the Seahawks. So they could go from playing really well to being 3-4 through 7 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if Greg Williams has his guys coming out there with brass knuckles trying to take care of him.
That too.
Moving on to next week, we have the Buccaneers and the Bears playing on Thursday Night Football. And man, what a story the Bears have been this season. They bench an undefeated quarterback in Mitchell Trubisky, trot out Nick Foles, and I mean, y'all all know what happened after that. But the Bears are just such an interesting team, man.
They really are. There's a lot of ways that I like to say with a lot of things. There's a lot of ways you could take this. Trubisky, yeah, they were undefeated, but they were going to lose that last game if it wasn't for Nick Foles.
Yep.
But then again, Nick Foles comes out on Sunday, and did not play well. I watched that game at work. It was, I worked at Sportsnet, so I had to do that game.
Right.
God, that was ugly.
Yeah.
That was such
a low-scoring game as well, too.
19-11. It was ugly. But Nick Foles, it's going to take him a little bit. It just give him a couple of weeks. It's not a 1-week transition. You know what I mean? So, I mean, stuck in a tough position right now. And he has a quick week coming up here, and I'd like to see what he can do against Tampa Bay because they have a pretty good defense. So we'll just sung the praises of on Thursday night. Who knows? Because it seems like they're hitting their stride, kind of thing. I don't know, but the Bears also have a very good defense. So I'm actually looking forward to this game. This is going to be a good one.
Yeah, I mean, we've been kind of plagued by really awful Thursday night matchups, and we have the Buccaneers and the Bears this week, and I believe, if I'm not wrong, we have the Chiefs and the Bills next week, which, I mean, is going to be a very, very good game. And speaking of entertaining games, we have our picks of the week for our most interesting games. I have the Colts versus the Browns. I love what Jonathan Taylor has been doing with the Indianapolis Colts. Phillip Rivers hasn't looked particularly good in that offense. T.Y. Hilton has been an absolute ghost out there. I have yet to see him have I believe it's been over a dozen games where T.Y. has had over 100 receiving yards. So I don't know if that's the game where he's going to get going. But, I mean, we've seen what the Browns can do when they really kind of come together. So it's such a sport media thing to say that that's either going to be a blowout or a close game. But I think that's really true in this situation.
Yep, I agree with that. My entertaining game of the week is the Bills and Titans, and this is just good old smash mouth football. I just like what the Titans bring. Listen, I've been on you about the Bills and stuff. They're a good football team. There's no beating around the bush there. They're a good football team, and if I play the Bills, I'm not chalking up an automatic W. And
I don't like our defensive line versus their offensive line. I think Taylor Lewan that's an ideal matchup for him because he's either going to get Trent Murphy or AJ Epinesa. And Trent Murphy is a very, very silent player. You usually pencil him in for 3 or 4 sacks on a year. AJ Epinesa, our second round pick, he's barely touched the field this season. Our run defense has looked atrocious. Our defense itself has looked atrocious. So, I mean, I'm not penciling this in for an automatic win.
Well, that's why it's going to be entertaining. But like you said, if their run defense is as bad as you're saying, that means Derrick Henry might have a field day. So
I'm nervous. And our linebacking cores look pretty bad. AJ Klein, get him off the roster. Tyrell Dodson replaced him. Matt Milano's been injured. And it's just been Tremaine Edmonds has been missing tackles. Man, I'm concerned. Derrick Henry's going to have a field day with us.
Oh, what? there goes my pick.
Interesting game of the week, though.
Yep.
Moving on to our underdogs picks. I have the Panthers beating the Falcons. This one is interesting because we get all of our like favorites, who's supposed to win, yada, 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 off of the Score app. And they actually had the Falcons being favorites to the Panthers, even though the Falcons have yet to win a game. I really don't know where that line comes from, but I mean, I think that this one I feel like is going to be super low scoring. But if Bridgewater can kind of rekindle what he did this past week, I think the Panthers have a shot here.
My underdog pick is Chargers over Saints. The Saints are favored by 7.5. I don't know fully if the Chargers will win, but I will pick them to cover 7.5 because Justin Herbert's playing fantastic. Now this is, full disclosure, we record this usually on Tuesdays, so we don't know if Michael Thomas is going to play next Monday. I would assume he is. For my fantasy team, please God, I need him back. I don't know so far, but so if Michael Thomas plays and there's no restrictions at all, I would be a little bit hesitant on this pick. But given that he's not currently, I would pick the Chargers because I like what I'm seeing out of Justin Herbert, and I know it's in the Superdome and whatnot, but there's no fans, so that doesn't really matter. I like what Justin Herbert's showing. Keenan Allen's playing well. They have a pretty good offense. They just lost Austin Eckler, so I'm a little bit concerned about that, but they also have two backs, Joshua Kelly and Justin Jackson, that can both catch the ball and run the ball out of the backfield, so I'm not too worried about that. Their secondary is a little bit banged up, but it's weird to say, but Drew Brees honestly doesn't really scare me that much, if I'm being dead honest with you.
He's had a
and there's no Jared Cook either, so I don't mind the matchup. I think they'll cover 7.5.
Yeah, and I mean, we saw what happened against the Saints and the Lions. They gave up 14, and their defense isn't particularly stellar, but that'll be definitely an interesting game to watch. And on that note, that is the show. Thank you guys so much for watching. Click like if you like this video. Click subscribe if you really liked it. Tell all your friends. Let us know what we can improve on. Let us know what you want to talk about in the comments. Make sure you follow us on social, Twitter at FTFN Network. He's at Gardner_Nick. I say this every week. I'm at the Hodowany. Please don't judge me. On Twitch at twitch.tv/FTFN. Obviously, you're watching this on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you guys next week.